I'm Whitney. I'm with Kuzi Construction. I'm an account executive, and this is Innovations and Integrations, and I have Trevor Nolan with me today. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So you run a business in defense technology related. Right. We'll get into more of that later because I really have no idea what that means, but Summit Advanced Program Consulting, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do.
Absolutely. So when I retired from active duty in March of 2022, I started Summit Advanced Program Consulting, and with the explicit mission of working within the defense technology space. So if you think about any emerging technology, whether that be aircraft, satellites, artificial intelligence, data analytics, those are the things that I did when I was on active duty, and so it was an easy transition to then create my own company, continue to utilize my network, both here in Colorado Springs and then throughout the Department of Defense, and really just continue to serve in just a different uniform, right? So took off my camouflage and put on a sport coat and kept the same friends, and then just worked to bring the best of technology to the Department of Defense.
Okay. So you are a veteran.
That's right.
I meant to touch on that earlier. Air Force.
That's right. 21 years. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your service.
Thanks.
Tell us what made you want to serve?
Oh, to serve in the Air Force?
Yes.
That's an easy one. So I come from a long line of folks that have served in the military. The only one that was in the Air Force, that was my grandfather, my late grandfather. And, I just really admired him, looked up to him throughout my entire childhood. But my mom served as well. She served in the Navy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and her brother served in the Coast Guard. And then even those that didn't serve in the military, in a military uniform, a lot of them served either at the municipal level, the county level, the state level, or even a little bit different twist on service as as union members, as advocates, as So really, I come from a long line of servant hearts, and so for me, it meant military because I was a very social guy growing up, and I was more interested in, I would say, all the extracurriculars than I was in my academics, and so for me, I just saw the Air Force specifically and the DoD, all the services, as a brotherhood that I really wanted to be a part of. And so, I kind of scraped through high school to get to my final, what I thought was going to be, I'm done with school, I don't want to go anymore. Well, then I went to college, right? And then in college I did ROTC, and then from there I was commissioned, and I commissioned in 2001 and I retired in 2022.
Wow, that's a long service.
It was great. I wouldn't give a single day of it up, for sure.
So you got in ROTC at 18, then went to college.
That's right.
And then joined
in
the Air
22,
Force.
active duty in 2020, or at 22 years old in 2001. That's right.
Wow, and then you just officially retired from service last year. And now you're running Summit.
That's right.
And from my perspective, you're doing a lot out there. You're all over the place. There's so much overlap. I'll be talking about something and you know more than I do, and it's crazy. So how are you getting the business that you're getting, the traction?
Sure. So before I answer that question, let me pull that back a little bit and say the reason that I am able to see you everywhere is because you're obviously in the mix as well. So you're a recent transplant to Colorado Springs. Yes. And I lived in Colorado Springs 3 different times during my active duty time. Right? And so I knew the great part about being in the military is you get to travel all around the world. You get to, experience amazing places and less than amazing places. And then you get to pick whichever one's your best or your favorite. Right. And you make that your home forever. And so that was me in Colorado Springs. So first time I touched ground here in Colorado Springs, it was 2003. And so I lived here for 4 years during that assignment. Went away for a number of years, came back 10-ish, 11 years later, was here for another batch of years, and then intentionally took what I knew would be my last assignment in 2019 here so that I could retire in place. And so I would say that knowing the town, growing in the town, and then wanting to serve the town would definitely define my 3 different touch points of Colorado Springs. So it's true. When you're retired and you start a new chapter of life, when you're in the military, you have a lot of people to answer to.
Yeah.
When you're a civilian, you only have one person to answer to. And that's yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to try everything. I want to do everything. And I want to continue my service.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to service, I want to introduce portions of charity, and I'm doing some of that as well. And then the for-profit stuff is nice because it keeps my mind sharp, it keeps my
Right.
network strong, and it allows me to still kind of directly serve to that DoD mission. And so all the decisions I've made over the last year have really been to those different lanes, right? You gotta make a little bit of money, okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
You still wanna serve in a meaningful way. That's been really rewarding. And the charity portion is really new, and so I've been doing that deliberately as well. And I have zero complaints my whole life. It's been great. But back to your original point, the reason why we see each other everywhere is because you are doing that same thing. And you haven't had all of the years in Colorado Springs, and we're in the same rooms. So that speaks a lot to your tenacity and your ability to hit the ground here in Colorado Springs.
Well, it hasn't been that hard. I appreciate that. But this community, I moved here intentionally like you. This community is amazing. It has that small town feel, and the infrastructure is growing, and that's cool to see. But there's such a high prevalence of DoD with all the bases and then the families, and so it just was very accepting and easy to start talking about SCIFs, which is what I focus on in a lot of my business, and that is an overlap with you.
That's right.
Because as far as I understand with your business and defense technology, in order to do those programs, these contractors need secure facilities.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how I got here today. And again, yeah, I was really excited that you invited me. So let's talk a little bit. Let's break that down. So my entire career, I worked with classified programs. I mean, it's not uncommon for somebody to join the military and that's all they've ever done. And so that has certain physical security requirements, what we usually call gates, guns, or guards. Mm-hmm. And that is all around a secure facility where you can process, exploit, and disseminate, acquire, develop, deploy and employ all of these classified things. So everything from, and let's talk a little bit about why we secure things.
Right.
It would not be nice to be able to tell everybody everything, but then you lose some sort of your asymmetry when it comes to warfare, right? So you want to be able to appear 10 feet tall, mm-hmm. and you want to be able to demonstrate that you have the willingness to use these things if pushed.
Right.
And you want to have the ability to maneuver within the continuum of conflict, right? Escalate to de-escalate, mm-hmm. or brinksmanship. There's a bunch of different methodologies behind that, but we classify these things so that we can protect and defend the United States of the nation, right? Other nations have things that they're trying to keep secret from us too.
Right.
But ultimately what it does is it allows us to not just go to war with everybody, right? There's some amount of restraint.
I like that actually. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. But in that restraint is where we keep these tools that are, in some cases, they're something that anybody can have, but maybe they haven't understood how to use it in that certain way.
Right.
For example, a toaster is meant to make toast. Well, if you're somebody you don't like or your adversary is in a bathtub, it could be used for other things. right? And it's not to make toast.
Right.
So we may classify the fact that it has that application, right? Okay. And then there's some things that are just state of the art, where the United States or our allies have a technology that is just something that we don't think anyone else has been able to think through, build, and maintain.
Right, you protect it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you have to do that in very specific facilities like SCIFs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, civilians do that in lots of ways. We protect our prized things.
Right, intellectual property, for example.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense.
Badging and passwords.
Yes.
It's just an extension of those things.
Yeah.
It just looks a little bit different when you're wearing a uniform.
It does, and it sounds so serious. From a civilian and new to the SCIF world and DoD in general, we think of everything's with guns. Like protection equals guns. Mm-hmm. I guess, especially from Texas. I just wasn't. I was so naive that there are facilities that have all of these mitigations in place that protect in all the other ways. And so it's cool and it's comforting to know that we go to those extents to protect information and our people, in extension our people ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
No, it's great. And that's why I think that we've naturally created a connection between Kuzi Construction and what I'm doing at Summit Advanced Programs Consulting. as more and more companies are realizing that the quality of life is amazing in Colorado, especially
Yes.
Colorado Springs, and that there is a lot of defense work to be done with the beginning of the United States Space Force, and with the renaming of all the installations here, right? Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station, Schriever Space Force Base,
I didn't know they
Peterson
were
Space Force Base.
renaming all
That's
of
right,
it.
so they all used to be Air Force stations or Air Force bases, but with the stand-up of the new service, there's really a big focus on technology here specific to the Space Force.
Okay.
Now there's other folks in town too, right? We have the United States Air Force Academy north of town.
Yes.
And then we also have United States NORTHCOM, as well as a bilateral command between us and Canada called NORAD that's here as well.
Oh, I didn't know that was
Yeah.
with Canada.
That's right, so that's Defense of
Oh.
North America.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we also
Okay.
have a special ops unit here as well that is, it's considered a theater special operations command, which is Special Operations Command North, which is
Okay.
also in Peterson. So there's just so many different government customers here, and they demand that highest level of tech. And with
Yes.
that, they have requirements for secure facilities. And we've just, over the last, well, just the year that I've been exposed to it, you know, my whole life, the SCIF has never been big enough. We always need more people, or we need a hot desk. But now
Yes.
it's just exploding. I mean, we're really going through a big evolution when it comes to,
Yes.
if you want to play in defense tech and you want to be in Colorado Springs, which you obviously do because holiday life is good. and
Right,
everything
this is a
else we
place to
spoke
be.
about. It's a place
Yeah.
to be. But it comes with a physical security requirement, that's SCIFs.
Yes. We've talked about this before, and you talked about the evolution of like the SCIF expectation. And there's lots, you know, originally the mindset is this underground dark box, small. And now they are not small anymore, not all of them. And they're not underground typically, at least for DoD contractors, people that are helping with those technological advancements for the government. And so I'm seeing, you're seeing different expectations as far as the work environment in a SCIF. Previously, it was, you know, I had a group of people, all DoD, raise their hand at this meeting, and you know, who's all worked in a SCIF, and the whole room went up. Who all liked it? And they all like laughed, you know,
Right.
no hands, right? Because it doesn't leave an impression of, I love working in there. They might have enjoyed their job, but they didn't necessarily enjoy the environment because the security is, you know, the focus.
That's right.
And now we're seeing a shift where the expectation of material application, the integration of natural light, and how that plays into the psyche and the happiness, the contentment on the body and the mind of the people that are spending so much time in there. And so some of your clients that are overlapping, we're seeing some really cool investments in that. And I would like to hear your thoughts and opinions on this evolution in that physical world of the SCIF.
So that's a great question, and I will tell you, you're spot on. You know, I did 20 years in a SCIF, and like you said, it's not happy times. Right? I mean, you are, you know, when I was a young guy, right, and you even go to get your clearances, you know, you're just looking for like the darkest, deepest hallways. You know, you're going downstairs and through hallways and through doors and more doors and more doors before you finally, you know, reach this, you know, holy of holies where the secrets are kept. And then you have to watch videos, right? And then they just show you like, hey, you're in a position of trust with the United States government and your life will not be amazing. Like you will not see the sun.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's hard on a lot of folks. And, you know, during my career, you know, I'm the 9/11 war generation where, you know, I came in, you know, a few months before 9/11 and did my entire, you know, nearly my entire career at war. So moving from SCIF to SCIF, from country to country, it really, you wouldn't know where you are because you're just in that box. Like you were saying, no natural light, you're, you know, many doorways between you and the outside. And we were busy.
Yeah.
You know, frankly, we were pushing data as fast as we could. We were, you know, building, constructing, integrating things as fast as we could. And that was our mission. And creature comforts and quality of life were distant, you know, in the background.
Right.
I wouldn't even say a distant second. In many cases, I'd say distant 15th.
Right, it's far.
Right, and
Yeah.
shifts are long. For a lot of folks that are, processing, exploiting, and disseminating a lot of classified information, they're on 12-hour shifts, and they'll do 4 to 5 12-hour shifts in a week. It's hard. If you're deployed, you get 1 day off. And
Right.
so you're in a SCIF for 12-hour shifts for 6 days straight with 1 day off.
Oof.
It's hard. And then
Yeah.
you add on top of that, you're many time zones away from your family, or you're working nights, either, even in the same city as where your family is, but you don't really see them because you're sleeping during the day. Because unfortunately it leads to dark places. I mean, you live in a dark place, and then you kind of just, that's where you are. So that's the bad part of it.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to how do we fix this going forward, people are open to spending a little more money
Yes.
to have and to meet the instruction as it's laid out, but to give their folks an ability to see natural sunlight, the
Yes.
ability to have some places to collaborate, like what they see or what they would expect at a Facebook or Google or something
Right.
like that,
Yeah.
where it's like, wow, I feel valued as a human because 2 or 3 of us can gather around this little cool kitschy table and and be able to talk at the appropriate classified level. It doesn't have to be a cubicle or an office behind an office,
Right.
And so I just think that that's good on defense tech and a lot of the contractors that are doing this and making it a priority.
I like that point a lot because we just presented something to you numbers wise, and I was shocked to see we did both base level versus great materials and considering all the bells and whistles, and I was shocked to see that they were not that different.
That's
so
right.
why wouldn't you? And I think you touched on something good. We have very important, educated, qualified people doing very serious work, arguably the most serious work as far as security and protecting America, and their work environment does not reflect it.
That's right.
And while then we have the Googles and the Apples and the Facebooks, and their work environments are amazing, And it's just kind of this backwards idea, and if we can level that out, it can instill, I think down the road, it can instill better protection because they're working better.
And you're also going to have less turnover.
Yes, that's a huge one.
Because
yes.
I'll tell you, even during the war years, when I was in SCIFs here in Colorado Springs, people would just be worn down, and they're like, well, I'm not even really in the fight, in their mind, right? They're not in the Middle East. So they'll take a deployment, even if it's not related to what they are an expert in, just so they can go and work someplace else. And then if you look at that then in the defense tech side, when you're talking about these contractors, look at the amount of turnover.
Yes.
And so I don't know this to be true, but I would be interested to see if anyone has ever studied the effects of SCIF and the amount of turnover. Because I would imagine that when we're talking about these fractions of dollars, when you're talking about an overall build of something that's
true,
how much are they losing in turnover? Because turnover is the most expensive thing you do as a business owner, right?
Yes, I'm excited to be part of the evolution here. I'm seeing it, and even my team has been building, I'm new, a year, but my team has been building SCIFs for 20 plus years. Kuzi's been in construction for 36 years, and they, I started instantly receiving clients with higher expectations for their SCIFs, and the team, it took a minute for them to wrap their head around, like, that's a lot of money. I'm like, that is not the point. But you're right, it's not a lot of money. It might look square foot versus square foot, that's way more, yes. But turnover, overall satisfaction, getting the job done efficiently, it's negligible.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would say if it took Kuzi Construction a year to get their head wrapped around it, it took the government many more years, right? You could put a times 10 on that or something, right?
Yes.
For them to realize, wow, we really need to start taking care of some folks. Because I'll tell you what, some of the best jobs, most rewarding jobs I've had are the ones where, gosh, I'm in the Air Force. Wouldn't it be nice to watch a plane take off? Right?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
That goes a long way. And the mission is to fly, fight, and win. Well, if I've never seen an airplane before, gosh, it really wears you down, because you identify as an airman.
You have all your...
That's right. And so I just think it's really great that we're trying to do something for the folks that are airmen that do want to be, associated with flying, fighting, and winning America's wars. And this is just a way to do that for them.
What exactly, we've talked a little bit about this, and you use like words. One, the defense technology aspect, and then we've talked about algorithm warfare. Some of these things just blow my mind to the extent where I need to know more, but what is that? Algorithm warfare.
So there's a great book recently that came out. It was called Like War, and it has the Facebook thumb on the front. I would highly recommend that book to anybody that really wants to understand social engineering.
Yeah.
It does talk a little bit about adversary nations attempting to sway voters' opinions and things like that. Well,
Yes.
all these things are mathematical and algorithm based. That's what algorithm warfare is, and I will tell you that there's a lot in the open press that talks about that. But anytime you're talking about the United States as a nation is trying to put less humans in the fight.
Right.
You want to be as effective as possible while protecting as many Americans as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they say is, American treasure is our young sons and daughters that go and fight our wars. And so anything that we can do, and a lot of those things happen in SCIFs, those advanced kind of technologies and programs, that's what their intent is. Ultimately, warfare is an extension of politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
When diplomacy doesn't work, and kind of all the other instruments of power have been exhausted, then you shove with military. And so, but what I love about our country is, gone are the days of sending every,
young person,
doing the draft, and every young man goes to Europe or Asia to fight a war. Now we're trying to do it in smart ways. We're doing it with machines. We're doing it with machines that talk to other machines, even if they do disparate things. We're trying to create and fuse information and do it at a speed of relevance, and do it at scale, and do it over time. And those are the things that we build in SCIFs and that we implement in SCIFs. So it's just so important that the future of American warfare is going to be built and executed out of these facilities.
I'm still learning things that could happen in a SCIF, and it makes sense to me that a lot of that information it's primarily technology based.
That's right.
And recently I've had to get a one-on-one course on the low volt side of it, how that plays into the security level within the SCIFs, because there's the SCIF and then there's security within the SCIF. And then I heard, it all sounds like just otherworldly to me when a civilian, specifically me, I'm listening and I'm trying to agree, and we can cover that. And I'm just like, what is that? I'm like, can we cover that? They're like, yeah, we got it. And I'm just like, okay. But the server room, the communication room, the hub that runs the SCIF, right, where all the network comes. One of my customers had talked about, well, there needs to be room for the supercomputer. And I'm just like, what? Are we talking quantum computing at this point? Or what is a supercomputer? Is it actually super? And the answer is yes. The space it takes up, the heat, that it offset, or with HVAC, it has very specific needs. There's all these things that are happening in a SCIF, that it's not just conversations. There's the internal infrastructure to manage it so that it's secure is crazy. So tell us a little bit about the programs. There can be JWICs or SAPF, or there's different
layers.
Yes,
that's exactly right, compartmentalization. And so when you start to talk about secret level data and top secret level data, this is how you handle the material. And then when you start talking about top secret and anything kind of above that, it's either the means by which we get that data, the sources we get that data from, if you're talking about intelligence data primarily. And then we do have other program data beyond that. And what we want to make sure when we're building these facilities, the information is, it's our crown jewels, right? And so they need to be protected in such a way. Insider threat is real. We watch a lot of videos on insider threats, espionage, traitors to our country that found themselves in a bad way or influenced by another nation to move data, classified data to our adversaries. And we lose, in some cases, decades of research and good engineering work to get to that, and we can give it away in a minute. And so when you're talking about being able to further restrict movement, physical movement, as well as movement within the cyberspace from the different computers, the military's going, the DoD CIO, so the Chief Information Officer for the Department of Defense, is implementing something called Zero Trust. Zero Trust it's not a thing, it's more of a methodology of how we can protect data, so that when someone gets access, say you have a top secret clearance and there's a top secret associated computer you're allowed to work on, you're supposed to be in there for the thing that you're supposed to be in there for. You're not supposed to be in there for everything that's stored on that computer. That would be lateral movement. Or if I then wanted to go work on a computer that maybe had programs beyond that, well, that would be vertical, right? And so in order to be able to protect vertical and lateral movement within the cyberspace or within the storage of this information, we're trying to really, in a meaningful way, do that. Well, we do the same thing when we're talking about these server rooms, where people's badges only give them access to portions of the server room where they should be working on that particular equipment and not any other equipment that's in the room. You're exactly right. When you start to scrape petabytes of data, if you're doing some sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning type algorithms, it generates a lot of heat. I would say it's akin to mining Bitcoin, like tons of heat, tons of power, and it has cooling requirements, all these other things. But then we also have to be able to make sure that that works everywhere in a server room, and that not everyone has access to everything, right? Only where they need to be in order to accomplish the mission.
And that plays into the different compartmented areas within a SCIF.
That's right.
And just because you have access to the primary area does not mean you actually...
You need to know. So what we say is you have to need to know material contribution.
Okay.
So if I am working on a new toaster, and you are over here working on a new mixer, desktop mixer or kitchen top mixer, I don't need you in my area because you don't need to know about the special technology that's going into my toaster, nor do I need to know about your mixer or the new attachments you're putting on it. So those things, although they are both classified to the same level, I don't have a need to know about yours and you don't have a need to know about mine. That's why we further compartment within inside these facilities.
Well, we talked a little bit about, we build SCIFs, obviously. You work with companies that need SCIFs. You've worked in SCIFs. You've seen SCIFs all over the world. And one of them, you talked about being part of, at that time, the largest SCIF build.
I did. So inside what at the time was the 21st Space Wing headquarters, now the Space Force has reorganized how they call their different units. But I was a vault chief there and was responsible for the reconstruction of an existing SCIF into kind of bringing it up to current code, bringing it up to higher standards, redoing the conference room, and we also maintained a lot of old contracts, etc. So I did oversee that before. Early on in my career, in this portion of my career, when I started out, I had the opportunity to work with Lockheed Martin. And they have different campuses all over the United States. And I've worked at some of them even when I was on active duty. So when I was up here, they have two near Denver. One's called the Deer Creek facility, which is amazingly beautiful. Like the architect, I think they bought it from somebody else, but I mean, it's built into a mountain. They have the whole, they have a whole canyon all to themselves. Like it is amazing. They have these big spotting scopes where you can see eagles right outside their window. They have a koi pond. I mean, it's absolutely over the top.
Sounds like a retreat.
It does sound like a retreat.
It does.
And then they have one at what's called Palmdale, California, which is in the Antelope Valley, and I think it's like the crack or meth capital of California. But it's also one of the highest concentrations of PhDs in the entire state because they do a lot of hard engineering there. And it's just like a complete dichotomy, right? It's just like, don't tell anyone at Palmdale that you work at Deer Creek because there's haves and have-nots, right?
Yes.
And I think that what's important about what we're doing with SCIFs here in Colorado Springs is it really forces the issue. You got to take care of these people.
Yes.
Because as much as the information is the national treasure, the people that build these things are the national treasure.
Yes.
And we have to take care of them, or else they're going to go do something else. If somebody's been working their whole career in national security and have had some amount of clearance or been working in SCIFs, you really want them to keep doing it because they're only going to get better.
Yes. Yeah. On the other side of that, we talked also about some of the holdups. Building a SCIF is different in construction than any other type of build because there's all the protocol, the tape that you have to jump through to make sure we're doing it correct all the way through. Because ultimately, it has to be accredited, which is the check mark by the government that says that this is up to security code and you can now do business in here.
That's right.
And the accreditation process, if we build it wrong, then it delays the accreditation.
That's right.
And delays work. And so there's all these things, and I think that you do also, you know so much about SCIF requirements that you help your clients understand the basic needs to qualify to be accredited, right?
That's right. So when we break that apart to government and then industry, the government's kind of used to being disappointed.
Oh, okay.
And so when something gets delayed, it's just like,
No big deal.
it's just the government, right? It's just the way it happens. But when you're talking about industry, they lose money.
Yes.
Every minute they're not open and working and generating revenue from that facility, it costs money.
Yes.
And so that is really kind of my focus now is, number one, I want to attract the best tech into the city, and then I want them to have a good quality of life, but ultimately, I need them to get open.
Yes.
And I need them to be working in a facility that is accredited to the appropriate level so they can do their work, their best work. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. That, if you go sideways from an accrediting official, whether that be the Defense Intelligence Agency or the National Security Agency or any other accreditor, everything comes to a screeching halt. And it's the absolute worst thing that can happen. So by partnering with a construction company that understands that, gets that, and is sensitive to the fixed facility checklist and to everything the accreditor brings up through the entirety of the project, from design to build to accredit, that is the path of least resistance.
Yes.
And that's what I try to bring, which is why Koozi's obviously my preferred vendor when we're talking about SCIF construction. So.
We also got into a little bit of what holds up on the government side, on the military side, what can hold up a build, and you had mentioned things that just we would never think about, like wildlife habitats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that takes us back to what I believed to be one of the largest SCIFs that was built in recent history.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now
yes, you're connecting.
Excuse
You're good.
my old age.
You're good.
So this was at Beale Air Force Base in California, and we were building what we call a military construction project for a very large, which I think was probably around 80,000 square feet. It may have been smaller. And things that you have to take into account when you're building on new ground. So the way you get around this is you just keep renovating
the same
existing facilities.
Okay.
Because we have something in that part of California called the fairy shrimp. And I don't consider myself a fairy shrimp expert, but I will say that because of all the rain that they've had this year, for example, they don't always swim. They're like inland shrimp or something like that, but when it rains a ton like this, all the marshes start to fill up, then they do fairy shrimp things. And more fairy shrimp are created.
They swim.
It's an endangered species or a
Yes.
protected species, and so you have to do environmental studies. You have to do lots of these types of things, because what a lot of people don't know is military bases are primarily always considered wildlife protected areas, etc. So, I mean, like even if you go to the Air Force Academy, you're going to see elk, turkey,
Beautiful.
like things that you won't see just in
beautiful.
other neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods, because the military
Fosters that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And part of that is it could definitely slow down your project if you have to consider a fairy shrimp.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the engineers are out there building dams essentially
Yeah. So
for the fairy
for
shrimp.
the fairy shrimp, to make sure that we don't destroy their natural habitat.
Right, which
Right.
slows down the build of things because you have to,
Right, and
allow
those
this
people,
process.
and as soon as you start talking about protection agencies, their calendar is not the same as your calendar. And it's definitely not the same as the government's calendar. You talk about the Army Corps of Engineers, they have a calendar.
Yes.
And so it becomes complex.
Yes.
But we got to it, and I'll tell you the 9th Reconnaissance Wing, which is the host wing there, they have an amazing facility, and it's filled with lots of people doing amazing things.
Yeah, no doubt. We get to it. There's just a little bit of things that we don't think about as construct. Like, what's the problem? It's the shrimp. And we're like, what?
Exactly.
What do you mean the shrimp?
Probably not your bit.
Trace is like, get find a solution. I'm like, I don't have one.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked a little bit about the impact, yes, on SCIFs on people, and we skirted around some of the studies, but I think ultimately we're excited to see a change in SCIF environment to ultimately help it be a place you want to work that's good for your brain. I talked about one of my contacts, he's an architect here, doing studies. He builds SCIFs, he's primarily TS, and doing studies on the association of SCIF work and the suicide rate. And that's not a fun topic, but it's a good topic now that we're addressing it.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. So, veteran suicide, active duty suicide is always been tragic, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely tragic. And so, anything that we can do, I mean, it's not. There's not just one approach, right? It's going to take a million approaches to solve it. But I honestly think so. In recent history, the Air Force had a very high suicide rate specific to DCGS operators. And they work long hours, 12 hours in SCIFs. And not only that, a lot of them are looking at images. And so all the lights are off. So not only are you behind a million doors, the lights are all off.
Yes.
And the only light that you see is the light that's coming from your computer screen. And that's happening for years of your life.
Yes.
Right? Same thing, or similar situation with remotely piloted aircraft operators and their sensor
the
operators.
little mobile SCIFs that they
right.
sit in.
And so, anything we can do to make a better situation for our airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, Guardians, we're going to do better by them.
Yes, and that's one of your passions in general, is not only just community, and that's a lot, but you are passionate about helping service members both while they're in and then when they leave.
That's right.
And you are a published author. How many times over?
Well, I have 2 books scheduled for release this year, and then a number of other ones to come. That's right.
And they're focused on military subjects.
That's right.
So tangential or what have you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in this chapter of my life, I'm very focused on providing our serving members with every resource that they have available, as well as their families and their children. And so, my Military Might book series is all about that. So my first 2 offerings that are going to be released in 2023, the first one is called Military Might, How to Thrive on a Government Salary. And I'll tell you that today's interview couldn't have happened on a better day. Just yesterday, Congress took up a food security discussion for service members. Anyone can look up how much service members get paid on the internet. It's public record. Okay. It's not a lot. And when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's your child rearing years.
Right.
And if you have a couple of kids in your young 20s, you will be well below the poverty line. And food security is a real thing when it comes to the junior folks in the military. And so it's nice to see Congress take that seriously. And so my book, Military Money, How to Thrive on a Government Salary, really breaks down everything that is available to the service member so that they don't have to live that way forever. Meaning, as they continue to get promoted and make more money and get out of those situations, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't invest in their future from day one.
Right, you can plan for it.
You can by taking advantage of other resources that are available to you. It may come as a surprise, but you have a lot of prideful people in the military, right? And a lot of invincible people that want to go and shoulder the world.
I can do it, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they would rather spend every last money or run up every last credit card to feed their kids, keep a roof over their heads, et cetera, than to take help. And then meanwhile, in those years, which are honestly the best return on investment when you're planning for your retirement, the military's gone away from a fixed retirement structure. They now have what's called blended retirement, where it's a lot like the civilian world. It's matching. There's some amount of percent, and then they'll continue to match you. But if you're young and have a couple of kids, you're not putting any money into your retirement. Therefore, you have nothing at the end. So these are your most valuable years to invest. And so I break through that in the book. And as much as I don't want to say it's a collection of life hacks, it's a collection of things that are specific to the military and their families, things they can take advantage of, so that when they decide to leave the military, they have the freedom to do anything they want, that same freedom that they defended.
Right.
And so that's the goal with that one.
Okay, well, be sure to check out Trevor's books, Military Money.
Yeah, that's right.
And The Penguin Who Wanted to Be a SEAL.
That's right.
And again, if needed, we would both love to talk about SCIF with you, Summit, Advanced Program Consulting, and then Kuzi Construction. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me today. It's been a great discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.